Interesting. On YouTube, it just shows the screen. Let's see. Here we go. All right, everyone, welcome to CoachCon, the third series, which is executive leadership. We're so happy to have you here. This is episode 4, and we are talking about imposter syndrome. Please allow me to introduce LaMarqué Ward Sr. Mr. Ward Sr. is an accomplished author, entrepreneur, and educator dedicated to helping young professionals, young adults discover purpose and develop essential life skills. He founded Cincinnati Dream Academy in 2009, which later evolved into Dream Builders University, now a recognized leader in education and youth development. A lifelong learner and certified leadership coach, LaMarqué blends education, faith, and real-world experience to inspire growth and resilience. He's also a published author, community leader, and passionate advocate for empowering the next generation to compete, lead, and succeed. LaMarqué is going to talk to us about overcoming imposter syndrome. Welcome, LaMarqué.
Hey, thank you so much, Ty. And I want to say thank you to Kathy Wright, and I'm super excited to be here today. It's an honor and a pleasure, and this is a sweet spot of mine. This is a passion, helping people reach their full potential, giving them the tools. I would like to call it the intellectual technology, right, to be able to stand their ground in life. And so I'm ready to download this information and empower you to reach your full potential today. And so, as Ty has already said, my focus will be on overcoming imposter syndrome. I really don't like the term imposter syndrome. I think that it is, um, I think it's really a narcissist had to create this, in my own personal opinion, because when you create a definition and you define something, now people have they begin to measure themselves up against it, and I just don't believe that we are imposters. And so I'll talk about that as we get going here. Okay. Um, so that's a little bit about me, my certifications. Ty has given you a little bit about my background. And so, hey, our learning objectives today, right? Defining imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome triggers, challenging negative thoughts, overcoming imposter syndrome, document your wins, and in process syndrome is what we'll be talking about. So, imposter syndrome, defined as a psychological condition that is characterized by persistent doubt concerning one's abilities or accomplishments, accompanied by the fear of being exposed as a fraud despite evidence of one's ongoing success. And so the reality of this is that if you have the title, have the paycheck, and you have the influence within the organization because of your title, then you have to be committed to growing into it, reaching your full potential consistently. And so here, the only way you can be an imposter if this had to be real is if you're not committed to your process. So if you're not involved in leadership development, personal development, maybe you need therapy, whatever that may be for you. But at the end of the day, if you have a title, the question is, does your personal and leadership development and spiritual development, is it in alignment with who you're being paid to be or the title you've owned, right? So here, within this definition, it is classified as a psychological condition, but this you don't have to be stuck here with the definition that they have given you. And so, in many cases, especially with negative things like this, we work ourselves in alignment with the definition. Well, what do you mean by that, Mr. Ward? Okay, I'm glad you asked. And so we work ourselves into alignment. So maybe we don't want to do the work, or we don't trust ourselves, or we have some level of trauma that we have. And instead of being an overcomer, I have a defined situation and where I can say, hey, I struggle with this because of this. And so I take the definition, put it on a sticky note, and then stick it on my chest and wear it around all day. So as you all begin to as you begin to hear us, I wanted you to just take a moment today and to write down two things, not three, just two, right? What I know. So the K, take a moment to write down, what do I know about imposter syndrome, right? The second thing I want you to write down is what I wonder. Don't write down what I learned. So just take a K and a W and then just put a line and then just write down what you know or what you think you know. And then what do you wonder about imposter syndrome? All right. So you guys can carry on and do that. I'm gonna keep talking here. So what are some of your imposter syndrome triggers? So you have to know in life, one thing I've learned is you got to always have a strategy and you got to have a playbook, right? Life is a rhythm. So you've seen some of this stuff before, and in your rhythm, you have to make sure that you have a playbook so you have the ability not just to plan, but also to respond instead of reacting, right? Say, hey, you know what? I've thought about you already. I know you, mister, right? You don't work out well for me. So you got to have a playbook so you can respond and get the outcomes that you want. And so what some of that is, hey, look, what are some of those triggers? You got to identify them. You might need to take out a pen and pad and outline, hey, look, my childhood experiences make me feel unworthy. I feel like an imposter because of my childhood experiences, right? Maybe you didn't grow up in a competitive home and the workplace is competitive and maybe you feel like you don't have that edge. I like to tell my son, I said, do you want to be a lean back person or a lean in person? And maybe you didn't learn that naturally, but competitive workplaces can make you feel like you don't belong. Marginalized communities, right? So you may, come from a community where there's an assumption about who you are because of where you're from. Negative stereotyping. People may look at you and assume a certain thing. And then cultural insecurities or acceptance. So these are some triggers that, and some of these things, some people haven't even had the opportunity to place these post-it notes. I'm calling them post-it notes today, y'all. To place these post-it notes on us. Sometimes because of what we read or what we watch on TV or social media, we put the post-it notes on ourselves, and then we trip ourselves from reaching our full potential. This is this is why you got to understand too. You got to ask these questions, right? Who am I, and what is my purpose? So these are some triggers, but you also have to understand that hey, here's my identity. I was a world changer before I became the CEO of Dream Builders University and all of our various impact outlets. You all would call them companies, but I call them impact outlets. But I was a world changer before I was born this way, right? So because I was born this way, I've just been developing it over all these years. So I showed up a world changer. So I'm just a world changer who just so happened to be causing a lot of impact through the impact outlets at Dream Builders University. So you got to know yourself. So here's a video that I want to share with you all. Hello?
We can't hear the video.
Okay.
We couldn't hear it.
There's some music in initially, and then it's not carrying on. It played it during the test.
What you say, Ty?
The audio didn't come through. The melody at the beginning started, but then it kind of flatlined. It didn't we didn't hear it. I mean, it played during the during the test. I don't know why it didn't play just now.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, we'll skip it. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So it really was no audio. It was just what we saw on the screen, right? So it was just the music playing behind. I apologize for that.
No, you're fine. You're fine. If you want, do you want to start it over and just do that piece again?
Yeah, we can do that again. Here, let me unstop and then let me make sure that I'm sharing it properly on my end. Is that okay?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Can you all hear?
Yes.
All right. You all can hear it?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Uh, can you all see me and hear me and see my screen since we've come
Yeah,
back?
you did good. Yep.
We're good to go. All right. So how did you feel watching the video is my question. Seeing, how it played out, everybody really had their own colors. And I would like for you to take some time to reflect at some point on like how did you feel watching that? The next question I would have, are you living in your true color? Like many of us, sometimes we pretend it's easier to just fit in and go along with the crowd. And we talk like them, we dress like them, we just duplicate all the same things. But is it truly who you are? All right. Did you see yourself in the video? Did you see a little bit of you in the video? And then, is this reality? right? And as we all know, it is reality. Many people are walking around every day as if they're not who they are. And so, what I would challenge you to do is to honor yourself with bringing the full you to the table. I love, I love women in leadership. I love especially alpha women in leadership. And one of the things for me personally is, um, I say, as soon as I sense that I have a sister who's an alpha in leadership, one of the things I do quickly is say, hey, you can be the full you around me, right? You don't have to switch it up. You could be everything that who you want to be around me because I'm here for it all. I'm going to encourage you and help you to be everything you can be around me. And so, in essence, something like that with everybody, but that's just one area where I see women sometimes try to downturn it because, hey, they might be around certain people who may not welcome that. Well, with LaMarqué Ward, it's welcome. All right. So challenge negative thoughts, right? And so whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right by him referring. So at some point, it's going to come down to what do you believe about what you see in the mirror? Let's just let that sit there for a second. What do you believe about what you see in the mirror? Right? One of the greatest challenges I personally have had to do is learn how to love myself. So, you can't give what you don't have. And if you don't believe you can, I don't care how much effort you put into it, but deep down in your core, if you don't believe, it's not going to become reality. What I like to call moving the universe in my favor. So you got to believe, right? And whichever way that is, that's going to determine your destiny. So then we get to talk about my favorite things is neuroplasticity, right? And so if all of those things, those triggers that I talked about earlier, if all that's true, if all the trauma's true, the creator of the universe created, ingrained in human beings our ability to bounce back, right? And so neuroplasticity is the brain's capacity to continue growing and evolving in response to life experiences. Plasticity is the capacity to be shaped, molded, or altered. And you all can go on and continue reading the definition, but at the end of the day, scientifically, you don't have to stay stuck, is what I'm trying to get to, right? Until you take your last breath, neuroplasticity is a real thing. You can evolve and continue to evolve, and you can remake yourself and continue to remake yourself over and over and over and over again to reach your full potential and to become who you want to become. So you don't have to stay stuck. What they told you when you were young, that you'll never be nothing, you're going to be just like your mom, be just like your dad, that doesn't have to be your reality. Those voices that are still on replay, for some of us, that doesn't have to be your reality. You go to the workplace and they tell you, hey, you'll be stuck at this position. That doesn't have to be your reality. You can grow yourself. And so when I first got into business, one of the things that, I couldn't get contracts. I was struggling to figure it out, trying to get into the industry, whether it was working with corporations or in school districts. And what I figured out was my preparation was the proof that I wanted my dream or vision to become my reality. And so I had to believe in it so much that I needed to be over prepared. I realized, I said, man, I began to look around me at the world. I said, Tiger Woods didn't ask anybody for a dime. LeBron James didn't. They got so good at what they do. They believed so much. They over prepared and they delivered so much value to the market to where it didn't matter what nobody else thought, right? Even in some of the darkest days that they may have had, the market consistently is bringing them returning value for value because of the value they deliver. And they continue to evolve and evolve and evolve even into this day. And so my question for you is, and I had to ask this question for myself, LaMarqué, who are you going to become when you grow up? I'm still asking that question, right? Me and my wife are still talking about that. I'm still growing and evolving into somebody that's going to be even a better world changer than who I am and what I've done already. So this right here is major. You need to own it. You need to say, hey, I don't have to stay stuck. You got to talk to yourself. I know it hurt. I can acknowledge that. I felt bad. I had bad thoughts, all of the things that go with all of that. But I'm telling you, I don't have to stay stuck. I can, and if you don't like who I'm becoming, because some people they can't deal with you really, right? They know they don't they like the stuck you, right? Then I gotta move on, right? So you can just take some time right now at home. You can just say, hey, I'm moving on. Some of y'all might need to even take a step or two in another direction, and you might have to do the Heisman to stiff arm somebody and say, I'm moving on. I'm excited right now. This, like I said earlier, this subject is something that I'm passionate about because I enjoy watching people reach their full potential. And so don't give yourself an excuse for stinking thinking, right? And so at the end of the day, you don't have to stay stuck. So whatever, right? Hold yourself accountable, right? When you see those thoughts coming in, or when you see you have that moment, you can give yourself a little mercy and keep it pushing and say, hey, all right, that's a moment. That's not my reality. And I'm going to write that down, or I'm going to move on and keep it pushing, but don't give yourself an excuse. And so when you're on your game, how are you overcoming imposter syndrome? And so, you got to know, like I said, you got to be able to respond instead of react. So you got to have a game plan. If you're struggling with this definition, which I truly don't like, because a lot of people like, again, take a post-it note and stick it on their chest, and they say, I'm unworthy, I can't do it. And I just totally disagree with all of that. You you got to have a game plan. And the other thing is you got to execute. Why is the execution so important? Well, I'm glad you asked. I'm going to tell you all about it. Because without execution, you don't build up the confidence. You don't put the coins into the account to help you continue for you so you can see that, oh, my work is paying off. My work is paying off. So you got to be executing at the same time while you overcome. So what strategies are you using then? And so we'll talk about that, but you got to have a playbook. I've already mentioned that. And so some of the things you can do are right here, right? So I call them mind muscles. So improve your self-perception. You got to be able to look in the mirror. I had to learn this one day. Hey, hey, I love you. I believe in you. I forgive you, LaMarqué, right? And I had to say that to myself. And one of the things I said is most people wouldn't know their eye color if it wasn't for their driver's license. Many of us can't look ourselves in the eyes, right? And so when I did that, I wept. I remember looking in the mirror. I was in my late 20s, and I looked, and the sun came in through the window, and I saw I had hazel brown eyes. I'm like, man, you got beautiful eyes. I wept, and I love you. I believe in you. I forgive you. And so it is within that that I began to evolve and start the process of becoming a better version of myself that I can really own and be proud of. Separate inexperience from inability, right? A lot of times it's unfair. A lot of times folks don't have experience. And so you measure yourself up against somebody else. I tell kids all the time, I'm a millionaire in training, right? Back then and I tell the kids, hey, you're a millionaire in training. And they're like, well, what do you mean by that, Mr. Wood? I said, you were born with the resources and tools already there, right? God didn't make no junk, right? You were born a millionaire in training. More than that, if you continue to develop the value, but now it's your job to work it out through education, through development, through hard work, through commitment. Acknowledge your accomplishments, right? So you got to also acknowledge that. You got to, Abraham Lincoln, one of my favorite stories about Abraham Lincoln was he carried a newspaper article around in his pocket that declared him the greatest statesman on earth. And, you know, Stanton was his Secretary of War. But before Stanton was his Secretary of War, he would travel around and heckle Abraham Lincoln when he was on the campaign trail and write articles about him and put them in the paper. And but Abraham Lincoln just needed a reminder. It's like, hey, look, man, this is a positive reminder. You need to be keeping score and remind yourself who you are and let those moments continue to build. And as many of us know, because Lincoln's heart was so pure, um, he hired Stanton in his cabinet, and they said, you're crazy. So this is what happens when you're confident, when you're sure about who you are, right? They said, you're crazy. This man, as much stuff as, craziness he's caused you. And he said, any man that could cause me that much trouble can definitely be my Secretary of War. And it's the story's been told that when Uh, Abraham Lincoln was shot, and when he died, when he took his last breath, Stanton was there, and he said, "Now he belongs to the ages." So in all of that, you gotta get to the point where you're rock solid. You're 10 toes down on who you are and what you've been able to do. You gotta believe. Surround yourself with bucket filling people, right? If if they can't fill you up or challenge you to be better, then they can't be around you. Kathy knows this. You can't be in my 5 closest friends if you can't tell me I'm crazy. It's enough people tell us what we want to hear. Right? I need some folks to tell me, "Hey man, you're tripping, brother," and then give yourself mercy. Right? At the end of the day, you know, nobody's perfect. Even on our best day, we're not. And so you got to be able to give yourself mercy, right? Pick yourself up and then just keep it pushing. All right. So within that, improving your self-perception. Hey, what are you willing to do to shift this? You got to ask the question. Separate inexperience from inability. How are you going to convince yourself that you are worthy? Are you willing to do that? Are you willing to wrestle with yourself when you see you creeping back to feeling like, oh man, I'm not possible. Acknowledge your accomplishments. What are you holding sacred to remind yourself of your wins? All right. Surround yourself with a bucket full of people. Hey, your net worth is equivalent to your 5 closest friends. Be kind to yourself. Right? How are you discovering your self-worth, right? To humanity again. And then, when was the last time you appreciated yourself? All right. So imposter syndrome is the big idea. This is something that I came up with. I've been challenged to talk about this more. And so if 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 you are doing the work, if you're doing the work, so you have the title, you have the paycheck, you have the position, however you want to put it, right? But if you're doing the work and it's hard, but if you're doing the work, you're not an imposter. You're in process, right? And so true leadership begins with radical self-awareness. It's the leader who identifies their gaps and meets them with therapy, development, and an open heart for feedback. And letting go of the perfection mask, they block out the haters and choose the harder, better path, staying pliable enough to keep evolving. And so this is the reality that we need to embrace as a humanity, right? We are working everybody's going to work somewhere doing something, but everybody is still in process. And if you're not, and so the only way I would say that you would be an imposter is if you're not doing the work. If you're saying, "Hey, I deserve this title, this paycheck, and I don't love the people that I'm leading enough to become the best version of myself." Now, that's a problem. But if you're doing the work, if you're passionate about learning to love yourself and love people. And at the end of the day, this is an act of love. This is uh, leading people well, becoming it's an act of love. I want to meet you today, but I also want to meet the future problems and people with the best version of myself. And so the reality is, I would challenge and I would beg anybody listening to this session is to get committed to becoming, right? I usually ask a question when I'm doing training. I say, write this at the top of at your notes. Who do I need to become so they'll trust me? And we don't like to talk about that. Who do I need to become so they'll trust me? Well, they should just trust me. I'm in charge. Says who? Says who? Right? At the end of the day, as leaders, our job is we need to win hearts to the cause. We need to win hearts. And if it's as a leader, you got to know what the cause is and you got to live from that space constantly over and over and over and over again. And so if you're doing the work, you're in process. And guess how, when you get out of this process, when you get out, you'll never get out of process. You'll never. It's a lifelong endeavor. And so this is the reality of what we what we have in front of us with imposter syndrome, but also as I introduce imposter syndrome. So are you committed to bringing authentic value to humanity? You're not an imposter, you're in process. And so here we go, right? Are you committed? And this is your question to wrestle with. I can't do it for you, but are you committed? I know I'm committed. I know I'm always seeking for feedback. I know I'm reading the books, right? Meditating and praying, getting the feedback, taking harsh criticism so I can be better. You're not an imposter, you're in process. So thank you so much. This is LaMarqué Ward. And I always close with this, right? I always close, right? I don't take for granted that people, that everybody hears I love you every day. I just don't take that for granted. And so from my heart to yours, from my family to yours, from the Dream Builders University team to your team, we love you, and the world doesn't work right without you. Thank you. God bless.
All right. Okay. Good job, LaMarqué. Kathy, how did you do? Did you do good?
Yeah, it's always good to have LaMarqué on and to hear